My favorite offshore baits. The boys at the shop asked me to point out what some of my favorite techniques are for offshore fishing. Remind you, this is my favorite ones. We pulled in closer to shore here, so don't give me crap. It's pretty windy out there in the main lake. So I am not a big offshore cranker in the post spawn period of the year. I like it more later in the summer and the hot dog days of summer, late July through the middle of August. That's really when I pick up moving baits and cover a lot more water and fish the deeper style crankbaits and things like that, and big swim baits, the chicken, all that stuff. For me, when the bite's a little tougher in those post spawn conditions and the fish have just moved out there, I like to use drop shot a lot. I like to actually slow down, and this is the Magic Worm by Missile Baits, a Robo Worm Missile Baits collaboration. I do it with a Texaco style hook. This is an Ichikawa hook, I believe, with a keeper on it. Because I tend to fish this a lot tighter to the vegetation than I would later in the summer months, I like to cast it right into the edge of the vegetation, to be honest with you, and kind of work it out slowly. A lot of the vegetation, believe it or not, even though up here in Minnesota it's summertime, it's still kind of making its way out really deep and getting taller out in the depths. So there's some sparse grass off the edges, and I like to target that with this particular drop shot here. The last couple years I've done it with a wacky rig Senko, but I've been rigging them a lot more weedless of late because I've been fishing a lot more coontail of late the last couple years. So this style of hook and this style of worm has been really productive for me. Next up, go with the ever famous Ned rig, as we call it in Minnesota affectionately, the jig worm. I know there is a little difference, but that's kind of how it works up here for us guys. But this one here is the big TRD in yoga pants. This is my favorite color, TRD, and I go with the bigger one and a little bit heavier Ned head than typically you'd fish with this Ned rig application, because I'm technically doing what in Minnesota we call the jig worm with this bait. I am throwing it actually into the deeper vegetation and fishing it off. Now with this style of bait, it still has a really slow fall rate down there, and I do get a lot of bites on the actual fall of the bait after I snap it off vegetation and it's falling and it's working its way down through the water column. So this is as offshore as I kind of get this time of year, is slowly fishing this thing down to the bottom. So if that drop shot, if I think they're on the edge of that grass, I like to fish that thing down there on the very deep edges of the grass. But I'll go to this if I'm kind of not sure where they are in the water column. If they're up in a little bit shallower grass, or as I work myself offshore, how deep they are in the water column. A lot of times I'll find that they're suspended up on the, like halfway down the weed line this time of year, and you get kind of one here, one there kind of bites. Lastly, I think I've talked about it a billion times. I got a weird one rigged up here because I was trying something different, but this is a Max Scent Chigger Craw here on a football jig, naked football jig with no skirt on it. But it's the football jig. As you see, the head shaped like a football. It's designed to come through hard cover like rocks and wood and brush and things like that. But for us up here where I'm at, rocks tends to be the thing. Obviously this bait is for fishing directly on the bottom. So if you think about the three baits that I showed, to me it's kind of covering all the bases for me. If they're just up off the bottom and the vegetation edges, that drop shot works great. That Ned's great for falling down, or the jig worm through the water column and kind of finding out where those fish are staging up. And when they're down there hard on the bottom, especially if they're schooled up out there and there's bluegills out hovered over those rocks, I love to throw a football jig. Those are my three favorite offshore baits for this time of year.